Hello, welcome everyone to our webinar today that is going to be all about NIL for D2, D3, and NAIA. If you're D1 and you're wondering why we're not talking about that, that's because we've already done a webinar that was all about D1. So you'll want to go back and catch that one because in this one, we're going to focus on the issues outside of D1, although many of those are really the same issues, just sometimes at a different scale. I am Kristi Dosh. I am going to be your host here for the webinar today. I am a sports business contributor for Forbes and the founder of businessofcollegesports.com. I have been hosting the webinars here leading up to convention because I also have been programming the NIL track for convention in Orlando. If you're going to be joining us at convention, make sure you've registered for our NIL track as that requires a separate registration. But we have got 6 great panels for you that day, and I can't wait to see all of you in Orlando. Okay, so getting back to our topic today, I want to introduce to you 2 people that I have really gotten to know well because of NIL. So first, we have Thomas Jr. of basepath. Thomas is a co-founder of basepath and serves as the CEO. And I met basepath and got to know its product really early on in NIL. And now I've gotten to see how you guys have grown. And it's just been a really cool thing to watch the number of companies that have come into this space to assist universities and student athletes in maximizing those NIL opportunities. Thomas, I'll let you tell everybody a little bit about what basepath is and who you serve.
Sure. Yeah. And we're in no small part where we are today because of things that you've helped us to achieve, Kristi. So thanks for having us. basepath is a software company within the NIL space that is largely focused on the operational side of NIL. So we serve today collectives, booster organizations, foundations, athletic departments as they manage kind of the more minutia and tedious aspects of NIL. So from contract execution to task management to deal facilitation to payment facilitation and everything in between. We're stepping into actually helping to provide a lot more education and resources to student athletes through personal finance tools to help them understand as they're going out there and earning those NIL dollars, what the implications of those earnings are so that they can, be in good standing with all levels of enforcement, whether that's conference or NCAA, university, and, in this case, the IRS and taxes. So yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And thank you so much to basepath for sponsoring this pre-convention webinar. We really appreciate your support and the opportunity to bring this kind of content to the membership. I also want to introduce you all to Laney Higgins. So Laney is a student athlete at Oglethorpe University, a Division III institution, which also happens to be my alma mater. So I was really thrilled when Laney originally reached out to me as a high school student athlete who wanted to tell me about her first high school NIL deal before she entered college. And she told me she was going to Oglethorpe. And I said, wait a second, I went to Oglethorpe. So that wasn't even why she initially reached out to me or how we ended up connected, but a really cool thing that we share. So Laney, thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell everybody what year you are in school and what sport you play?
Thank you, Kristi. I'm a freshman and a volleyball player. And I love NIL so much. So thank you for having me come on here and hop on.
Yes, you were one of the very first athletes I thought of when I was putting this together as a panel. And I thought, okay, which athletes have I talked to at the D2, D3, NAIA level who really have jumped into NIL headfirst and had some great success? And you were one of the first people I thought of because I've been so impressed by what you've done with NIL. And like I said, you reached out to me first to tell me about a deal you got before even entering at Oglethorpe. And then I know you've done quite a bit while at Oglethorpe. You were in Meta's Female Empowerment program last year. I think you were the only D3 athlete who was one of the 30 chosen for that group. I was one of the coaches in that group. So we got to work together again during the course of that. And just excited to have you join us to share the student athlete perspective being at this level and what NIL has looked like to you. So thanks for joining us, Laney. All right. I thought we would kick off with Laney. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Why don't we start with that first deal you reached out to me with? What was your very first NIL deal, and how did it come about? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? Just tell us a little bit about it.
So my first NIL deal was with Q-Collar, which is a company that works with jugular compression to help reduce and prevent head injuries. And I've had a few concussions in the past, and so my dad had actually known the marketing director and had worked with her before in the past because she worked at Under Armour. And she had known about my past with concussions, and so she was like, you should try out this product. Like, we would really love for you to try it out. I know you're in high school right now, so we'd love for you to have an NIL deal and maybe work together through that. We don't have any volleyball players so far. And because of the rules in Florida, you can't have an NIL deal while you're in season. And so, luckily, my sport, volleyball, is in the fall. And this NIL deal took place. We had to wait a few months until I was out of volleyball season. And then it all came together really nicely. And I had decided that there wasn't a whole lot of concussion research out there. And so I decided that I should give back my NIL proceeds to USF Health, which has helped me so much with my concussion journey. And so that's how the whole deal came about. And I really appreciate everything they did. And I'm glad that it was able to benefit such a good cause that is really meaningful to me.
So when you were in high school, I kind of think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you because I live here in Florida. You're originally from Florida and went to high school here in Florida. So Florida doesn't allow NIL at the high school level. So you had to wait till your season and your eligibility was up. But how much was NIL even discussed at your high school? Like, was that something that coaches or your athletic director talked to, or something you learned about in other places?
No, not at all. I had just like seen it on Twitter and I was really interested in it. Um, but nobody had really talked about NIL. No one knew what it was really. So it was a lot of explaining what it meant and what it meant to me and how big of an impact it can make.
And then for that deal, what did you have to do as part of the deal? Were you doing social promotion or something else? What did that look like?
I was doing a lot of social media work. I did a few videos on it. I went and presented the check to USF Health, so I posted about that as well. But yeah, it was great.
Very cool. I love that. So you got that jump start. I get a lot of emails from student athletes who are starting school this fall, and they want to know what can they do over the summer to like get ready because they're so excited about NIL. And the summer sort of when they have time and they're out of their sport and could think about what they should be doing with it. So once you had that first NIL deal, did you have any sort of plan or strategy in terms of how you were going to approach NIL as you went into college and get more NIL deals?
Well, going into NIL and starting it, I was very determined to work my butt off. I wanted to work so hard because I didn't have a huge platform. Um, I was gonna, at the time, I was gonna be a D3 athlete. NIL at that capacity wasn't really a thing at all. NIL was just beginning in general. And so I was very determined to like show brands that, well, I'm not gonna have a huge platform, but I'm gonna be your hardest working athlete that you have. I'm going to do whatever I can to show off your brand and show how much it means to me, and just make such a big impact in any way that I can because I want to be known as someone that's a hard worker and gonna put myself out there. And I know how much NIL is important to like my future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thomas, I want to bring you into the conversation a little bit. I know we've seen more use for your software at the D1 level, and that's where we've seen a lot of the, the bulk of the transactions happening, especially in year one of NIL. We saw a lot more at the D1 level, but I know D2 and D3 schools, and even into the NAIA, were looking at programming that they could put together from an education standpoint, and just trying to figure out what sort of tools they needed in their toolbox to offer better opportunities to their student athletes. So one thing Laney said, and I know your software well enough to know what it does. Like one thing she said about the Q collar deal, and I don't know if your deal worked like this, Laney, but a lot of times when you're doing multiple either social media posts or multiple things as part of your NIL deal, your payment sometimes can be broken up over time, and you get a payment as you sort of reach each milestone. And Thomas, that's something that you all help. I think you guys started with a mortgage company with Michigan State and then moved into collectives, but that's one thing you guys can help do, right? Is make sure that student athletes are actually doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing to get those payouts, right?
Yeah, we certainly do a lot in terms of the task to payment facilitation, just ensuring that the quid pro quo is met. I think there's a ton of opinions and thoughts on what is or isn't out of bounds. I think the one that everyone can largely agree on is an athlete has to do something in order to receive a payment. But quite honestly, Laney, I'm also just kind of curious, if you don't mind. I had another follow up on that because we've seen this with a lot of the D2, D3, NAIA athlete, and even high school athletes of using NIL to basically get jobs. Like when you were going into this, and I really appreciate what you said in terms of the hard work and like developing your brand and getting that reputation for being someone who's going to go out there and just kill it for what you're being tasked to do. Like, did you see it as that in terms of an opportunity of being able to potentially find places where you would want to work on the other side?
I feel like NIL is such a good space to build relationships. Even early on, as Kristi was probably one of my first relationships that I was able to build and then further grow. Whereas I'm able to like introduce myself to other athletes and get information from them, and I'm able to learn. I do this segment on my Instagram, and it's an Instagram live segment. It's called Walking and Talking, and we just talk about, I bring on other female athletes who are in the NIL space, and we talk about how do your brand deals come about, just information about how to work hard for it, and I just learn and learn and learn, which has been awesome for me. And I, in my future, I want to be in marketing, and so this has really been able to show me and help me learn about what an audience wants to see and how to better connect and engage with my audience.
I love that. And I mean, that's largely what we've seen too, is we've started to help to support some of the programs at the levels that you're at, is providing the tools that are true life skills beyond, like, certainly we can help on the, Kristi, to your point, and thank you for, giving us credit for what we can do. And we can certainly do the operational aspects of it really well, but trying to kind of meet the folks where they're at. And when you start talking to, and, we've had a number of great conversations with folks, and are even working with some at those levels, providing them real skills that they're going to be able to take with them. I mean, that's really kind of, I know there's a ton of folks have a ton of different opinions on what NIL is, here for, and what its intentions are and how it's being used. But I think when you look at it at its core, it's providing a set of skills to a student athlete that they don't otherwise typically have the capability to kind of gather. It's, learning how to do business, learning how to, build a brand, learning how to pay taxes, as tactical as some of that stuff is. We found a lot of the folks at those levels are trying to kind of gain what I would say are true life skills that, even like myself, I wasn't a student athlete, but like I went to college. I didn't know half of like what I needed to do coming out of out of there going to the real world, where we're seeing a lot of these student athletes that are getting involved in NIL are really equipping themselves with, the tools and the capabilities that, are really exciting, that, will enable them to go forward with way more confidence, to your point, having an expanded network, working with real businesses that, whether they have marketing budgets or want to hire folks, the talent kind of coming out the other side of these engagements is really exciting, and trying to provide the tools to help support, athletes as they're going into and out of those types of engagements is something that, we're obviously really proud to be a part of. Kristi, back to the original point.
No, I think Laney is one of a small percentage of student athletes who really feels comfortable reaching out to strangers and feels comfortable sort of putting herself out there and being proactive about finding these opportunities. But Laney, a lot of student athletes are not like you, and they are wondering how to get started. I mean, I can't even tell you how many emails I get a week from student athletes that really the entire crux of the email is just like, tell me how to get started. And I think some of that is because there is some education lacking, even at the college level. We talked about how you didn't really get that at the high school level. I distinctly remember being at Oglethorpe and what sort of resources we had in the athletic department. I was a cheerleader, so I wasn't considered a real student athlete, but like we had to do a spaghetti dinner in the basement of one of the frats to raise money to buy new uniforms. So I remember what it's like to bootstrap at that Division III level. What does NIL look like at Oglethorpe? Have they provided anything in terms of like educational sessions or anything to help you with NIL? And I don't mean to call them out if the answer is no. I'm just curious what it looks like at that level.
No, not really. It's very different from the D1 level, where there's these big NIL buildings and you're getting all this information and like you're getting tools and stuff like that. But my teammates have really helped a lot, where I can say to them, okay guys, I'm gonna film a video, everybody think of your favorite blah blah blah, like and so they have really like helped me grow in that way, and help with my videos, and they like to help in any way that they can. I know my coaches do as well, so that's great as well.
Yeah. Thomas, you and I have been around NIL kind of since the beginning and seen all the different efforts that have been made to help student athletes with different segments of NIL. What have you seen in the education space that you think is both really good and really lacking?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, one of the biggest areas that we've kind of leaned into as a company, and I mean, like, if you come visit us at NACDA, you'll see it. We're doing a big kind of release of a new product here in the next couple of weeks. But I would say the largest risk factor that kind of comes out of NIL is on the personal finance side for athletes. I think if you just anecdotally look at, athletes generally, professional athletes, down to collegiate athletes, and we've done enough transaction volume to kind of get a sense of how athletes take care of their money and coming out the other side, like how they're thinking about the implications of their earnings. And like the long and short of it is they're not, in most cases, you have some really excellent student athletes that go way above and beyond, the Laneys of the world, that take great care of all aspects of their NIL, including the finances. But there's a vast majority of them that just don't have the understanding of the implications of what's going on as they earn this money, and whether the implications of that are, I have to pay taxes, whether they are, I should be putting stuff into, investment vehicles, whether it's, hey, I should, put this in a CD versus a savings account versus a checking account, like the kinds of tools that they have available to them. We think that there's a ton more that we can bring forward to really enable them to have success, both, again, like life skills stuff, like now in the immediate term, but also as they go forward, just having the capabilities and understanding. Like, I didn't learn about a 401k until I was 24. These young women and men are able to get this stuff at 19, 18. If you go to the high school levels, even sooner, of like, how do you position yourself financially to ensure that you're taking care of yourself, your future, your family, all of those things. And so providing them with the education and the tools that will enable them to do that, we found to be probably the most important thing. And again, just in terms of risk reward, there's no greater gift that you could give to a young person than helping them set up themselves financially. And also there's a ton of risk. If you're not taking care of your money, obviously just like the natural risks of, not being able to live a life that you want to, but also like the IRS, like the NCAA, the conferences, like, yeah, they may tell you can't play for the year. Like the IRS, like they don't go away.
Yeah.
So like those are the kinds of things that we're trying to protect them from as they move forward into their NIL journeys.
I was just at a conference where we were talking about sort of financial issues as it relates to student athletes, and somebody that was on the panel estimated they think maybe 50% of the student athletes who should have been filing taxes actually did it. They're very concerned that there's a lot of student athletes out there earning money through NIL that don't realize all the things they need to file and aren't doing their taxes. And unfortunately, the IRS, like you said, Thomas, is far scarier than the NCAA is. So hopefully more of that education will be sort of trickling down. And it's such, what I said on the panel was, financial education is so important, but also can be so incredibly boring. Like that's not what student athletes want to do on their night off, is go listen to a CPA talk about taxes. It's not what I want to do on my night off. So I think too, trying to like bridge that gap between what student athletes need to know and like getting it to them in a way that is compelling enough for them to really pay attention to and get something out of. So I know there's lots of smart people in this space, including you guys, who are trying to figure out that puzzle. Laney, I want to
100%. And I will say too, just
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Kristi.
No.
I was just going to say too, like on the life skill side, to Laney's point, like networking, marketing yourself, building a brand, like those are also really important component pieces that have, again, much farther reaching impacts on the life of, young men and women than just helping them get NIL deals. Obviously it will help them to do those things, but it's going to be stuff that will stay with them for the rest of their life that they're going to be able to leverage as they go forward.
Yeah, agreed. Laney, I want to switch gears a little bit. So I last year had the opportunity to go speak at a few different D2 conferences at their meetings with ADs and other folks in the athletic department. So I wasn't meeting with student athletes really so much as administrators. And this was during year one of NIL. And they all told me they felt like NIL was only going to be something that a handful of their student athletes would be able to take advantage of. They really had the mindset that NIL was a D1 sort of thing. And I couldn't disagree more. And I told them that at the time, that I didn't think that that was true, that I really do think there's NIL opportunities out there for everybody, because there's so many different ways to monetize your NIL. You can make money, teaching lessons. Frankly, I made a lot of money in college teaching pitching lessons because Oglethorpe doesn't have a softball team. And I grew up playing softball and then gave it up in college. So I was allowed to make money teaching lessons, unlike a student athlete. And I made a lot of money back in the early 2000s teaching pitching lessons, because parents of youth athletes, I'm sure as a lot of you out there know, will spend exorbitant sums of money for their child to become better at their sport. So, that's not something you have to have a social following for. It's not something you have to go to a D1 for. You can help coach a clinic with maybe a former coach that you've worked with. Maybe it's your music or your art that you're monetizing. People get really focused on social media promotion and how to make money that way, because a lot of the news stories we see about NIL deals are about social media based deals. But I've been a big proponent that, look, anyone who wants to take advantage of NIL, there's a way to do it. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you think NIL, what opportunities look like? Like, what else have you seen athletes at your school or at other D3s do? Like, give the administrators out there a little inspiration that this is something their athletes can be taking advantage of.
I know a lot of athletes at my school try as hard as they can to get themselves out there. But athletes also need to know that you're going to take more no's than yeses. It's just how it is. But you have to work hard in order to bounce back. And I feel like NIL really helps in that way. just like how you were saying, Thomas. And it helps in like your negotiation aspects. It helps you learn how to manage a business, like you're managing your brand. So I know a few of our athletes work in coaching, like you were saying. I know I assistant coach on like in the summers when I'm home. I know an athlete at Oglethorpe does like jump lessons and learning how to jump higher.
Okay.
And so he set up a program online in order for athletes that are basketball players, and they can sign up and learn how to work out and manage their body and health and stuff like that. So that's pretty awesome.
I love that. Thomas, what do you think? What have you seen at the D1 level that you feel like can trickle down to D2, D3, and AIA?
Yeah, I think you both mentioned it, like the creativity of student athletes continues to, I won't say astound me, but it's one of the most exciting things to watch in this space are the ways in which student athletes can engage with brands and businesses in their local communities. I find that is something that is agnostic of division and is something that will serve anyone well, regardless of whether or not they're, you know, to Laney's point, even at the high school level, all the way up to D1 or even into professional sports for that matter. Finding ways to meaningfully connect with folks that want to leverage your name, image, or likeness are always going to have an audience. And to Laney's point, like you are going to get more no's than yeses, but having that determination, having the that creativity and that mindset of trying to find the ways to deliver value or stuff that will serve them well way beyond their college careers, but also will certainly help them to get some NIL deals.
Yeah, for
I
those of you
recently
watching
dropped the merch line.
Oh, say that again, Laney.
Oh, I recently dropped a merch line about women in sports and the opportunities they get and how it makes them stronger. And I had to make sure I told people, look, it's not merch. Like, it doesn't have my name and a picture of me as a D3 athlete on there. It's about female athletes and empowering them. So that was really awesome. And I'm glad I was able to give back to the Women's Sports Foundation through my proceeds to that.
So how?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Laney, what's the name of the brand?
I worked with the NIL store to do an opportunity line.
Gotcha. I was going to say, we should co-brand this, the opportunity line with basepath for this webinar.
I will talk to the powers that be. Laney, how did that come about? Did they reach out to you or did you reach out to them? Like, how did you end up doing that?
So through the Meta NIL Empowered 2.0 program, I learned so much. We had these webinars that taught us so much about NIL, where at the D3 level, I wasn't getting that information. So it was great that I was able to get it through such a valuable source like Meta itself. And so they gave us brands that we were able to reach out to about different things like Rezzle or Champs. And the NIL store was on one of our calls. And so they explained how we can have our own merch and really try to profit off of our name, image, and likeness in any way that we can. So I took the opportunity to reach out, and I said, I know I'm a D3 athlete, but I want to do something bigger than my name. Like, I want to do something that has to do with female athletes. And how being an athlete and being a female has given me so many opportunities, like NIL, for example. And it's making me stronger. So that was really cool. And we got to work on the design. We worked on it for a while. And then I said that I wanted to make it bigger than myself. And I wanted to be able to donate my proceeds to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that was really cool because I think that as a younger athlete, I think it's so important, and I know my younger self would be so proud that to be a female athlete in college.
Laney, is your merch still up for sale?
No, it was limited edition, but I think I'm dropping another line soon.
Perfect. Well, when these webinars come out, we include any, resources we talk about and links to things. So I will get everybody a link to at least follow you on social media so that they can check out the next drop.
Thank you so much.
One more thing I wanted to sort of end on, Laney. You learned a lot, like you said, through that meta program, which everyone should know. There were over 500 female athletes who applied. Like, the athletes had to apply to be part of that program and were asked certain questions and to provide certain information. And they only chose 30 out of the over 500. And like I said before, Laney was the only D3 athlete who was chosen out of that bunch. But like, you had to put yourself out there to be part of that, and you were able to get some valuable education that way that D3s don't necessarily have the resources at this point to provide. Although I will take this opportunity to point people towards the last webinar we did, which was all about tapping into other resources on campus for NIL. So if you, feel like your athletic department can't afford to bring in a third party to provide education to your student athletes, I guarantee you there are professors and physical resources too on your campus that you could tap into for NIL. And we went through that on the last webinar and talked about how Troy University is using an entrepreneurship type center in their business school to help their student athletes with NIL. But I digress. What I wanted to ask you, Laney, was are there any other resources you have found useful? Like, maybe it's podcasts you listen to or people that you follow on social media. Like, is there anywhere else you're getting sort of your education around how to build your personal brand and create these opportunities for yourself?
Well, I know it just started, but NIL Island by Leah Clapper has been a great resource for learning more about NIL and how to work in this space and how to market myself, as well as just tools that she's provided. So that's been really awesome. So if you don't already, go check that out. I know, Kristi, you've been working on it, so that's really awesome.
I did not pay Laney to say that. I became Leah's business partner recently. She actually created that company as a project for her master's. She was my TA in the very first NIL class I taught at University of Florida. And in one of her master's classes, she was creating that business, but she would sit and talk to me about it because I had built my own business, and we would talk about sales funnels and email sequences and all kinds of the sort of backside of the business. And Leah recently just graduated with her second master's because she's an overachiever, and asked me to come on as her business partner now that her time as a student athlete is up. And I have to say, I learned stuff from Leah all the time. Like, I went and did a day of filming with her to do photos and videos for us to announce our partnership. And just like the way she thinks about creating content, like the camera angles, the actual like what we were doing that she was filming, like just seeing how her brain works and how she puts content together was incredible. So I run like SEO and some technical stuff on the back end of the website and some of the blogging and that sort of thing that I know more about. But Leah is the one giving the advice to student athletes about a lot of the personal branding and content creation. And I agree. I am in total awe of her, and I'm so thankful to get to be part of that project because she is a student athlete who put herself out there and was proactive and has done so many NIL deals and really changed the trajectory of her career. Leah is going to be working for herself now. In fact, right now, as we record this, Leah is in Israel. And after that, she goes to South Africa, where she got into an entrepreneurship program for a short little program this summer. And instead of having to graduate and go work for somebody else 40 hours a week, she has sort of created a business and life of her own. And to me, like, that has been the coolest part about NIL, is seeing how it's changed student athletes' paths and their opportunities after graduation. So I think you're on that path already too, Laney. You've still got plenty of time in school to keep making those connections and building those relationships and finding those things that are going to help you after graduation. But you remind me a lot of Leah in that respect. So I think we're going to see big things out of you as well. And we just so appreciate you sharing more about your experience as a D3 athlete. And for the administrators, follow Laney on social media. I follow her and I see the type of content that she's creating and some of the partnerships that she's working. And that might give you ideas for things that your student athletes could be doing or taking a part in. And if they need somebody inspirational to follow to see, hey, here's another D3 athlete who is really making the most out of NIL, I would encourage your student athletes to follow Laney as well and maybe get some ideas from her on how they can grow their following and do more with their NIL. So thanks for sharing with us, Laney.
Thank you so much. I learned from the best, you, Kristi, and so many of my favorite other student athletes out there. So the NIL space has been so important to me. So I really appreciate you inviting me to come on, and I've had the best time learning from you on your website and stuff like that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Thomas, what about you? Any parting words? Is there any advice you have for these D2, D3 NAI administrators about how they can help create more opportunities for their student athletes?
Yeah, I've thought, but thank you, Kristi, again. And Laney, such a pleasure to meet you. Incredibly exciting to hear the things that you're doing in this space and being a real innovator. Innovator, if that's one you can take with you
I like that.
For the next merch drop. But no, yeah, I think there's obviously a ton that folks can do to help support their athletes. Even if it's just giving them access to or helping them understand that there are resources out there to lean into. If it's just as simple as following Laney or going to NIL Island or following you, Kristi, there are so many folks that are doing really exciting and excellent things, if only just to have kind of the osmosis of being by it and seeing it and kind of taking part in it along with the others that are out there kind of trailblazing and innovating, I think is a great way to get started. And then I think there's obviously ways in which you can lean in on helping to provide, again, some of those broader life skills, things that will obviously be meaningful for them as they go into to help support their NIL goals and dreams, but also as they step outside of the four walls of the athletic department and step into the real world and go and try to take on their professional careers afterwards.
Absolutely. And Thomas and I will both be in Orlando. So for those of you who are headed to Orlando for convention, keep an eye out for us. You can go and learn more about basepath and all the great work they're doing in the NIL space. And I always look forward to seeing those of you I've already met before and saying hi again and meeting new folks as well. So look forward to seeing you all in Orlando. Thank you again, Thomas and Laney. So appreciate you joining us.